the DCEU, Snyderverse no more. Next up on Just to Talk, so let's talk about it. And happy 100. And welcome to the Flicks, Picks, and the Nitpicks. And I am your humble host, Loaf718. And happy 100th episode to Just to Talk. So let's talk about it. And we're going to get right to it, man. On this 100th episode of Just to Talk, it's actually wild to believe that we're at 100. Like, this is kind of dope. So, I'm having a great time talking movies and movie topics with you. And hopefully we can do another 100. So onward to another 100. It's going to be interesting what this channel can turn into. But we're going to turn into nothing but talk about the DCEU on this episode today. And at its end, as you guys know, I finally saw The Flash. I have to start pumping out some legitimate Flicks, Picks, and the Nitpicks reviews. Stay tuned. But I did want to talk about the end of the DCEU, which it is what it is. It is at its end. We still have 2 movies in a pipeline. Will they, won't they, with Blue Beetle, because we're not sure will they add this to the new DCU moving forward, or this will be just a relic of the old DCEU. So we'll stay tuned to that, because with whatever is the most advantageous way of going about it, I'm sure that's the direction that they will decide to choose. But let's just talk about its final end, because I saw The Flash, and the way it ends how old school movies used to end, where you're not really sure is that really how it ends, and if there's a part 2, we'll see if that was like a dream, a figment of imagination. We have to explain what the fuck happened before, or we don't. Kind of like the way the first Nightmare on Elm Street, we wasn't sure if that was a dream or it was a nightmare. But technically you gotta assume it's a nightmare, because everybody else was obviously it's a nightmare because it's a bad thing, but you know what I mean. Is this just somebody's dream, but it's left very ambiguous because everyone was alive in this? And I guess now to think about it, really wasn't ambiguous. I guess it's more about the vibe that it did. Maybe that was a poor example, because there's a lot of movies where they ended a certain kind of way where you're not really sure, because all those people had died in Nightmare on Elm Street. It's obvious it was a dream or a nightmare, but the bottom line is it's just the way it ends, where you're like, what the fuck is this? I feel like that's how this ends, and I believe Back to the Future kind of ends that way, at least the first one. And then the second one, I'm trying to remember if they even explained how the first one ends, or they just kind of move forward and you just assume that they got back to where they needed to be. I feel like the first Back to the Future ended like that, because there was a lot of Back to the Future-esque things in The Flash, to be quite honest, you know. So now that we're here now, and we've gone through so many different films, and a lot of things got disjointed. It's sad to say that the Snyderverse, even though it is part of the DCEU, it's its own thing within that, because up to the Justice League, and save for Aquaman 1, everything else was the studio trying to course correct what Zack Snyder already had did. And that's where a lot of the films started to fail, from the Harley Quinn movie, which was really supposed to be Birds of Prey, but it was basically a Harley Quinn movie, to The Flash, obviously. I feel like I'm forgetting Suicide Squad, even though some people will argue it was a critical success. as opposed to financial, we know for sure wasn't. But we're gonna leave caveats where they made for that film. Pandemic, date release, but I still don't think that was the reason. I just think one, old baggage was part of it. Let's be for real. I mean, I'm not gonna rest this all on James Gunn's shoulders, but old baggage, and they're trying to do something new and different outside of what was already established with the fractured universe and then fandom already there, and then trying to do something that Marvel was doing all at the same time while trying to be apart from be its own thing as DC property. And let's be for real, James Gunn kind of walked into it with that one. And you already know how I feel about the Suicide Squad movie. I liked it, I enjoyed it, but it was a big cartoon and a big step in the wrong direction, in the opposite direction of where we've gone. I understood why you would go this route. I mean, on paper it's rated R, but it's still a Marvel rated R type of film. Campy in a way, but trying to have some heart to it. Again, I'm not mad at what they did. It's just, it didn't feel like DC. It felt like a rated R Marvel film, for lack of a better way of putting it, but kind of ridiculous. And that's not the universe, the journey on this universe that I expect it to be on. And that's not a shame to James Gunn either. I feel like that movie could have fit as a better variation of the Birds of Prey world, because the Birds of Prey world doesn't feel like it sits in Zack Snyder's world, if that makes sense. That being said, after watching it now and seeing that The Flash is really just kind of the end cap to what they've done already, and pretty much a finale for the universe. I mean, present talk aside, because we'll get into that on the channel down the line. With the DCEU is going to be over. It is what it is. All of that because they're trying to set up for something brand new. And this Gods and Monsters Chapter 1, which I have a hard feeling that half of that is ever going to see the light of day. I don't even know if James Gunn will be around by the time they're ready to shoot after the strike. So, because he only had 4 years and he has a 10-year plan. And the way it's looking right now, he's not having a positive amount of cachet around his name. He's becoming as divisive as the guy that predated him. The only question is can they even make any money with this guy? You got to also remember, you're bringing guys over from a successful universe already, and it's just not working out for DC. DC seemed to have been best when they were trying to forge something completely separate from Marvel. And getting old Marvel employees doesn't seem to be working. And with Marvel having its own uphill battle of relevance now, because they're not having a good phase 4, and the streaming services may be one big major chink in the shield for the universe and the properties moving forward as a one larger franchise. It stands to say that DC needs to really be very careful about the talent that they start to bring over, as it doesn't seem like more of the same now at this point. Now that Marvel fans have had their fill of what Marvel does, and even Marvel, they want to do what Marvel did its first go out. But unfortunately, you can't start all over again. And they want to shake things up, because if they would have did everything like one movie here, origin movie, big movie, you guys might have noticed that they were treading old waters, and it might not be the proper business model moving forward if you're aiming for a successful franchise. And that's what people just gonna have to start to admit now. This is a business, and they're trying to execute the best strategy to maximize profits. It worked best very organically, but now people want to churn this out. They want to industrialize it. I think what DC aimed to do was very different, but it was still within the same model, but they were hitting for the very big stories. Well, is that the smartest decision? Maybe not, because then you have to begin with overinflated budgets as opposed to keeping it modest and hoping that as it succeeds, so shall the purse grow for budget. And even then, you want to have a sizable cap on it, just so you're not over leaning on visual effects. Because what are you hearing about Flash? Over leaning on the visual effects, and they felt like a lot of it was hit or miss. I would say yes, but at the same time, I can see why it could be stylized to do that. All except a lot of the Batman up close scenes, which looked like it was digital, like something out of a video game. I do feel what people were saying with regards to that. But now, you kind of like already ruined these properties. You'd have no choice but to start all over again. Look, I don't want to start all over again. I'd rather see Henry Cavill do Man of Steel 2 or see Zack Snyder take the franchise over. But with the strikes and these actors only getting older, even though they look good for their age, it limits how much time we can have with these characters. And I mean, dag, man, since it's been like 6-7 years since Zack Snyder's since the theatrical release of Justice League came out. That could have been 5 movies right there in between. We should have been on Man of Steel 3. Should have already came out or just been coming out. You know what I'm saying? Wonder Woman, we should be talking about Wonder Woman 4 and 5 right now. We should be talking about Justice League 3 if it didn't drop already in the past 2 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, there were just so much stories we could have told. Now even if Zack Snyder was to come, he can only come to orchestrate its eventual conclusion. Because let's say even if Zack Snyder was to come back, another movie from Zack Snyder wouldn't be out for about another 5 years. That means we'll have a 40-something-year-old Superman and his Man of Steel 2. I'm sure Henry Cavill will look great, but then we'll have to explain where he's been all this time. I mean, it's just unfortunate. We would have lost so much stories. Like, you could only really basically just tell a wave leading up to the eventual end of either a crisis or not apocalypse, but with the Omega beam, Darkseid. You know what I mean? So you either pad it out and have Darkseid come out a little bit later and make movies in between leading up to it. So maybe one more Wonder Woman movie, definitely a Man of Steel 2, Wonder Woman 2, Justice League 2, maybe going to a Batman in that wave. Then once you come off of that, then you go right into maybe like a Granny Goodness, or go right into Justice League 2 and 3, and then Crisis. But if you could put something in between a Justice League 2 and like maybe Man of Steel 3, then go right into like Justice League 3, then you could go into something like pad it out a little bit longer, but basically you'd have to kind of like aim for it in one way to get to Apocalypse and then do a Crisis to reset everything. But I'll be honest with you, one thing that I kind of want to get into is, could Zack Snyder come in and redo a brand new DCEU from scratch without just starting out things over again? And that might have to be a consideration, because James Gunn is not bringing a lot of good cachet to the property right now. He is becoming as divisive as Zack Snyder has been, and he hasn't shot a film yet. And partially it's because of what he walked into, but also how he's handling it moving forward and furthering the divisiveness of the fandom. But I will say this, the fans really have to understand the Snyderverse, for what it's worth, all intents and purposes, is over. You're starting to notice even some YouTubers having to rebrand, because they have to accept that even after the strike, it's taking so much longer before you, even if anything can happen, that for Gunn to fail and them to want to come back only limits what they can do moving down the line, to even salvage what was done before, to see what you can do moving forward. So it's not gonna be as easy as people think to just do Man of Steel 2 and then finish everything. And again, once you see that the YouTubers are starting to have to rebrand, because they know that there's not much more forward motion you can have with this universe. You can't center your business around continuing the storyline that the Snyderverse is going to come back. Even if you're getting true information saying that there's talks of it, you can't do this forever. The business model has to reformat and do something else. You can continue to revisit it, but you got to move on. Even the people that hate Zack Snyder, you guys are going to have to move on. You're going to need better fertile soil to plant some new seeds of hate or whatever on, because bottom line is, it is over. So you can't, quote unquote, continue to grift off of that. We have to restructure the business model now. So where can we go from here? We already know we have James Gunn's Gods and Monsters, which I'm not excited for. Some of you guys already made up your mind. But bottom line is, we have to see what he will produce. We have to allow the cook to cook in the kitchen, and then we can base it off of what he's presented on the plate. And then we could taste it and say, if it looks good as a plate, and if it's bad, then we have something to really talk about. Again, the plans, the ideas are not that exciting. We'll get into detail down the line later about my deeper thoughts on it. And the funny thing is, even though they're the concept is that even if it doesn't do good at the box office, it'll be a success because it's going to be expected to fail. That is an interesting curve for Gunn, because that means he gets two curves: Suicide Squad and now this. And it's like he could continue to fail upward. He'll have to really bomb this movie 2 times in a row before people start to consider that James Gunn just doesn't have his finger on the pulse of the culture. And I'll be honest with you, right now, I don't know who will. Marvel is going through a crisis of QC, storytelling, even CG issues. And with the Snyderverse officially over, at least for now, and the DCEU about to just bomb itself off of the box office records. I mean, Aquaman is going through reshoots as we speak again, because even the director, so it seems, is not even sure what cut they're going with, and they keep going inside the movie, scissoring it up, just like they did with The Flash. And the Muschiettis, after The Flash, even though I liked the movie, enjoyed it enough, but I got issues with it, seems to fail upward to get Batman Brave in the bowl. These were not wise decisions to make all these announcements. These are your early mistakes, James Gunn. And on paper, it would have made sense to do what you're doing. But I think he's done too much of it. He should have came out, shut down rumors in the beginning, and maybe quarterly did it. Like, yo, every 6 months say, hey, I'm going to address a couple of rumors that were just horribly wrong. No this, no that, no this, no that. When that rumor was out, that wasn't even, we didn't even make the decision. We made the decision, so this was luckily to be right. You know, find better ways to approach shooting down false claims instead of jumping into the pot all the time, because people are going to make that expectation. So the moment you don't say something, they're going to feel like there's something to it. And then you're back here again, where people having false notions of what's to come. And then if it doesn't come, then shame on the movie for presenting that to me, when the director's like, I never even told you that was going to happen. That was what Scoopers told you. And even if we considered it, this was just something we told you. So now we're fighting against expectations on a movie that wasn't even in it. And again, this further divides the fandom and creates more unnecessary negative chatter. But the thing is, the Snyderverse is over. Is there hope? I do believe there's still hope, but it's over right now. And looking back, I do believe people will revisit and realize the brilliance of those movies at the time. And hopefully the Air Cut will be released, because that's a film that I think deserves to see the light of day, just the way Zack Snyder had a chance to vindicate himself as an artist, as a visual artist. Whether you hate him or not, he got a chance to put out his vision. And even though I have some arguments now post it being released, why I see why they were extremely hesitant and what that meant for the industry, is a big thing that will be talked about for a lot of years to come. But we might have shot ourselves in the foot for getting what we, quote unquote, fans want. And the fans that do the most barking are the people that put the least feet to the concrete on anything that matters anywhere within the fandom. At least one thing we can say is the Snyder Cut people, they put money into billboards and stuff like that. Whether you believe in the conspiracies around that, people did put money behind this. So are you willing to put money behind James Gunn staying, or do you just want to argue it now? That's why I always say, who are the fans? But one thing again, now that the Snyderverse is over, we have a new universe coming out. We will finally see if since everyone seems to know exactly what DC needs to do, and you believe James Gunn does, we will finally see, is there a quote unquote right way or wrong way to present DC to the masses on live screen as a fully cohesive universe. And we'll find out. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. You know, do you still think the Snyderverse continues? Are you finally at that road where you say it's over? And even if, and for those that finally get there, Are you willing to move forward and give James Gunn a chance? Leave it on in the comments below, and you already know what to do. Like, share, subscribe. See you next time, and as always, time for a better outro. Chill.